Well, I was doing a play on Santa Monica Boulevard, a respected theater, although some people called it a toilet. And Leonard came to see this play where I was a Russian peddler in the freezing Buffalo, going from door to door with this Russian hat on, having great difficulty with the language, and selling what I call a fruit fluter. A fruit fluter, you screw it into a potato, and it comes out a ribbon, and you make a beautiful design, and it's great. But I had more difficulty with the language. And it was a very endearing story, and so many people in the audience could identify with immigrants and people having difficulties in the country and trying to find a way to make a living, working out of poverty, discovering that the streets are not paved with gold. And I worked my way into this family of an optometrist, and I had a great relationship with his daughter. And it was very comedic and very sweet. And Leonard came to see it, very tall Leonard. And after the show, very low ceiling, Leonard came backstage. His head was kind of scraping against the ceiling. And he said, "I think you're terrific. We're going to work together." And I was used to people saying something like that, and I was saying to myself, "Sure, work together. Right." Well, it takes a while to get out of character, and when Leonard came back, I was probably still Moshe Golub from Grobny Gubernii, and thinking in Russian, and maybe translating as I was going along and saying, "Look, everything in life is a risk." So, yes, Leonard called me the next day, and I said, "How do you do, Mr. Stern? It's a great pleasure to talk to you," showing that I wasn't that guy anymore. Within 2 years, he created the role of Siegfried for me, and we became very dear friends. This is 1962, and we're still friends today. And he's one of the golden moments in my life, Leonard Stern. And the name of my corporation is Leonardo Players, Inc. Thank you, Leonard. I went to NYU, and I had a very formal, classic Shakespeare, Shaw, Barrie training. And I found that nobody was buying me as a Shakespearean actor, and it took California doing arena theaters to kind of quiet the technique down and get it to be a little more casual. But it wasn't until a fateful day that I had this agent at the time that would send me up for parts that had already been cast. It was a very negative kind of a thing. So one day he sends me up to CBS Television City, and the casting lady there, Marilyn Budgeon, says, "I'm sorry, the part you're up for," and we said it together, "has already been cast." I said, "Well, thank you very much," and I was on my way out. And what she said next was as fateful as anything in my life. She said, "Mr. Kopell, as long as you're here, would you like to read for Pablo?" And I was saying, "Pablo?" And on my way in, I had seen 5 guys who could have been Pablo or Jesus or Juan or anything, Latinos. And I just was so frustrated, or you might say pissed, that I said, "Okay, I'm going to take up the precious time of Buzz Blair, the producer, and I don't give a damn. I'm going to see if I can beat Pablo." And I had no idea if I could, but I remember, okay, going in, and my heart is thumping away. I said, Jack Parr has Jose Melis, 1961, and Jose Jimenez, Bill Dana has Jose Jimenez, and I'll do them. I didn't know if I could. And I went into his office just fired up with frustration and anger and piss and vinegar. And I nailed it. It was like I was flying high. And for the next 4 months of my life, I'm playing Pablo, and I'm threatening ladies, and I'm being mean and everything. And I remember Harvey Korman came in to play a detective. One day Harvey Korman came in. And we'd had a beer afterwards, and he said, I thought that you were Mexican. I said, well, that's because I talk like this, and because I do the accent, it sounds like I could be, but I'm not. I'm a nice Jewish boy from Brooklyn. That's what I am, and that's what I'm going to remain. Unless they give me a check, then I'll be anything I want to be. I can play anyone on the planet, any voice on the planet, any accent on the planet. It was a big stretch for me later on in life to do Love Boat. Very difficult to actually play myself. So I was a little trepidatious meeting Don and working with Don, especially since I felt on thin ice because I had no contract. But there was an immediate acceptance and welcoming comedically with Don. And I was so grateful for that because I mean, Siegfried was way out on a limb. He was very, very strong in the approach. And Don said later on, Siegfried sets me up, where you come at him very strong with a setup, and he could deliver his punchline, and I got to do punchlines. So it was a very, very happy experience. Don had a bit of a reputation for sometimes usurping the director, but I say this to anybody who is a fan of Get Smart, you will never know the pressure of being the title role in a television series, knowing that you must deliver every week, be funny. It's inhuman pressure, and Don handled it extremely well, although sometimes he got a little testy, he got a little impatient if somebody didn't know as much as he knew about it. But later on, afterwards, and one of the pictures that I have just shows the sweetness of our relationship. He just became the dearest man, and it was always, didn't we have a good time? Mel had just come back from a tour of Italy, and we said, Mel, everybody gathered around Mel, the mentor, the great Mel Brooks. You know, we'd had a 2,000-year-old man going around in our minds. We said, Mel, what was the greatest architectural achievement in all of Italy? And without missing a beat, he said, Carlo Ponti's elevator shoes that permit him to kiss Sophia Loren on the lips. Mel Brooks, it was like, it just, boom, comes out. I didn't have my first child until I was 64. And going back, and this goes back to Mel, Mel is a spritzer. He's a tumbler and a spritzer, and I'm sure everybody knows what that means. But he asked me when we were doing Get Smart, he said, you got any kids? I said, no, I don't. He said, read the manual, read the manual. So I read the manual. I love you, Mel. I need work. Well, the classic training, I think I was trying to compensate for a Brooklyn accent, and I think it had to do with really wanting to make a living, because nobody was hiring me as that Shakespearean actor. And even my mother said, my mother said, Bernard, I don't understand. We send you to NYU, you're walking around the house with January, February, all the classical theater, and all of a sudden I see you on the television for the first time, and you're talking like a Puerto Rican. I said, Mother, I don't know how to tell you this. I'm playing a Puerto Rican. Let me tell you something else, Mother. For the first time in my life, I have a job on television. I'm getting checks. The checks are clearing. Do you understand this? He said, oh, this I understand. Siegfried's relationship with Agent 86, it was just as terrific as anything could possibly be. It was a little Abbott and Costello. It was a little, I don't know, it was a little Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. But it had a certain bite to it. And this is what Don liked. And that was the character that came out of me. It had a force and a bite and a sort of attentive, compelling sort of focus. And it helped Don, and it helped me, and it was heaven. And I was 33 at the time. I'm now 72, but I look back on this as being one of the outstanding, happy memories of my career. Agent 86 was that little boy who would go into flights of fancy and flights of empowerment, but who really didn't think things through very carefully. Siegfried was contemptuous, he was supercilious, he always had the answer, and everyone was not as good as he was, but he was defeated by Max 100% of the time. And this is, I could just imagine little kids saying, yippee, we got, we bested the bad authority. And I think this is one of the great appeals of Get Smart. But Get Smart just made me so happy. Like I said, I'd have a 7:15 call. I'd get there at maybe 6:30 or something like that, just getting on a bicycle and just being so delighted. And we had Ray Sebastian was this marvelous makeup man. And as the makeup went on with the graying of the hair, Betty Iverson was the makeup lady. She was the hair lady, spritzing the hair, getting the mustache on, looking more severe, getting the Heidelberg dueling scar on, the collodion scar that stayed with you for days afterwards. It just made me happy. I don't remember what the previous line was, but in the very first show, which was so telling for me because I had no contract, Leonard came on the set, and I had captured the chief, and the chief is sitting there. And I said, "You will not divulge our location, you understand?" Yes. I said, "Okay." So he can talk to Agent 86. As soon as he gets on the phone, he says, "Okay, we're it." And I do that to one of my henchmen, and my henchman goes, hits him over the head, and he goes, "Boom." And Smart says, "Well, what happened?" I said, "Your chief has just been silenced by a pistol butt." He said, "Well, couldn't you just shush him?" I said, "This is chaos. We don't shush here." And that became one of the runners, because Leonard was on the set, and he said, "Forget about the other line." He said, "Use this. This is." So then it became, we don't do this here, we don't do that here. There was another sequence where in Snoopy, Smart, and the Red Baron, Don and Barbara discover this World War I biplane that I've been using to destroy the potato crop of the United States. All of these plots. And he comes into the barn, and the plane is covered with straw and hay. And he said, "So that's the plane you used to poison the crops?" And I said, "Exactly. We promised the farmers free crop dusting, but instead of insecticide, we spray a newly developed bacteria, a bacteria capable of entering the potato by osmosis. Once inside, it eats up the entire potato, burps, and dies, leaving no trace." And then Starker says, "And then Siegfried flies home victorious." I said, "Starker, this is chaos. We don't here." Another one of the runners of catchphrases. Oh, I have another catchphrase. When we were in the submarine, we were being bombarded with depth charges, and Smart is giving me the needle, and he said, your men are beginning to panic." And I said, "You will not panic until I give the order to panic." And now 2 depth charges shake the whole thing, and I said, "Prepare to panic." These catchphrases just came out of Don's mind, out of Leonard's mind, out of Buck's mind, out of Mel's mind, and sometimes a few out of my mind as well. But you had gloriously brilliant comedic minds working intensely. When I say intensely, we were having a lot of fun. And there was also a spirit of freedom, a spirit of creativity, of easy creativity. Nobody was sitting on anybody with some kind of authoritarian seriousness. It was like, let's enjoy this, let's have fun. And we had a terrific time. We had a script, we studied the script, but once you're in a set, the set sometimes, and doing it with the characters will give you a line, that's so obvious to you in the set. And that's how so many of these lines came out. And of course, Leonard was always there, hovering, haunting, and he would say, why don't you try something? Try this, try that, like the sled, like the this, like the that, and see if it works. And I would say 99 times out of 100, it worked perfectly. Mel made the point, and Neil Simon makes the point, and subsequently I've done some of Neil Simon. And I've read Neil Simon's books, and I've listened to Mel. You've got to bounce comedy off the hard wall of reality, or else it's just mush. So you get some people who are doing wagga wagga, and it gets tiresome. It just gets to be, oh, come on, don't do that. But when you're bouncing it off the hard wall of reality with a very firm attitude, I mean, going back to Sid Caesar, the brilliance of Sid and all of those writers, it can only be funny if you are seriously funny. This is why people would sometimes say, why is Don so serious? He's finding that hard wall. No, he never did anything that would be frivolous or goofy or that silliness, because you just blow it. Get Smart was a satire, but Don brought that. You want to find a word: sincere approach, bouncing it off the hard wall approach, a firm approach. None of it was well, we're now doing it, yeah, because you lose it. You lose your audience because you say, people will look and say, it's goofy, so who cares? I remember one of the lines that, and this was one of Buck Henry's lines, these high-ranking generals and admirals are in the war room, and they begin to have a quibble, and the quibble elevates into a fight. And one of the guys says, please, gentlemen, stop fighting. This is the war room. Stop fighting. This is the war room. And that was a brilliant line from Buck Henry. Oh, the old gun and the rabbit trick. I had the rabbit, and Don thought he had me, and I said, I would just like to play with my little rabbit, and I reach in here and I get my rabbit, and I got, hands up! And he said, the old gun and the rabbit trick, the second time today. Or some goofy thing like that, but it was all done. Or in Schwartz's Island, the great huge, oh, it started up like this, huge magnet. And Siegfried had this thing where he would magnetize all in this insane plan of his. He was going to get all of the ships from the 6th Fleet and pull them down into the bottom of the ocean. And he did it with this giant magnet, pointing it down and pulling the ships together. And I came up with the chief, because the chief was wearing one of these old diving apparatuses. And I got the chief with a clunk, and he came up, and I captured him. Don and I were asked to do in the late 90s a commercial for a diabetes product, but through Johnson & Johnson, and we got together And as always, every time we'd see each other at the Playboy Mansion or here or there at a social thing, it was always such a happy coming together. Looking back at the times we had, I mean, one of the things we always laughed about, where he was pretending to be Major Kessler. He had his mustache and he had his German accent on, and he said, "You look very familiar." He said, "I've seen you someplace before," and I couldn't quite figure out who he was. He said, "Could it have been?" I said, "Could it have been in El Alamein?" He said, "Nein." I said, Was it the Italian campaign?" He said, "No." I said, "How about Berkeley?" And he did his famous Berkeley take where he has his drink and he goes, I said, "How about Berkeley?" And he goes, it was one of those amazing takes where he has the drink and I said, "Whoa." I didn't have my first child until I was 64. When Don found out that I had the child that I was hoping for, when we did this commercial for diabetes for Johnson & Johnson, he got down on his knee. He was still well at the time, and he said very closely to Adam, he said, "Your daddy's been waiting a long time for you." And that showed his heart and his sweetness. Just that, saying to Leonard, I'm very grateful for that day that you came to see me in the 49th cousin and thought enough of me, trusted me enough to cast me as Siegfried. I know some of the older actors, as I said, I was 33 at the time, got a little pissy about that they were the right age. By the way, it was a lot of makeup. Now there's about 3 seconds of makeup to get into that age thing. Very grateful, very grateful. My attitude is gratitude. And that's why I named my company Leonardo Players, Inc., after Leonard Stern. So, thank you.